response video to Ludite Returns. Back on this moral nihilism thing, this idea that in reality there is no definable statement, there is no true statement regarding value, regarding the fundamental capacity to make a judgment, and put in the form of a statement, distinguishing between one state and another state, that all states that the universe might be in are somehow parallel or equal in terms of their value. And value would have to be defined as something having a preference, something being in a state where you could judge one state better than another state, where it would be part of its fundamental nature that it is this thing, it is this would be in this position and that would be in this position on a scale that says this is desirable. And so this is the long way around trying to say is these nihilists say, they argue that there's some sort of default position from which we are stuck, where we cannot make any determinations, that we have no evidence or any indication that there is anything of value happening in the universe, that all the universe, all the bits are exactly equal in terms of their value substance. Rephrasing it again, he's denying the existence of suffering or pain or pleasure as a thing that happens in the universe. A thing of any substance, of any value weight or value gravity or value significance. And this all comes out of some Nietzschean thing where because God is dead, therefore we can't figure out what has value. That we can't define a morality through evaluating circumstances and seeing how they impact things and making judgments that have any coherency to anything that could be called reality. Plainly, I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing consciousness. I experience sensations. So to say there's no evidence would be kind of ludicrous. I have the evidence of my own experience. I experience it. I don't even need consciousness explained to me. But even if I was a non-sentient intelligence and I had an open mind to a theory that something was going to testify to me to and state that it has a sensation or it has a feeling. I think it's quite possible that some people feel things that you don't feel and they explain them to you and you say, wow, that's pretty bizarre. Maybe. I can't think of can't think of anything in particular. I can't think of an anecdote right at the moment, but perhaps that does happen. But let's just say there was some alien creature and it came and explained its way of interpreting the world. And it explained that, yes, this is a state I don't like to be in, and this is a state I do like to be in. That concept seems as solid as water being wet. It seems pretty fundamental that the testimony states there's a good state and a bad state, a desirable state and undesirable state. So should we just keep going through all the words for hot and cold and good and bad and preferable state, not wanted state? It just seems obvious that evidence that I personally experience is substantial. And then I further validate that evidence by communicating with other human beings, and they explain that they have pretty much a lot of the same sensations. They endure the same sort of feelings. They are afraid of the same kind of things, like tumors and other things that were going to cause them suffering. And these are all things that we commonly understand to be averse, and then the word we could use, repulsive, fundamentally not desirable, not something. If there's a button to press, you certainly don't press that button. There's almost like, for some things, there's almost any button you would press before you'd press that button. It's perfectly consistent and rational to state that from my own personal experience. What other evidence do I need? Why are you denying the existence of my own consciousness? You're telling me its testimony is false or fake. I can assure you quite absolutely that I know quite absolutely that I wouldn't want the universe, all the empty space in the universe, to be filled with migraine headache. I know that's not a button you press. You don't go anywhere near that button. This isn't that complicated. We do have strong evidence. It is correlated to real documented fact. I'm as confident of the meaning, the fact that there is meaning, that there is differential meaning, that it is decipherably, substantially different when I'm suffering and when I'm not suffering, as I'm certain the world is round and that the earth travels around the sun, and all the other facts in the universe are of no more certainty than my certainty that I don't press the migraine headache button. It's certain. The evidence is conclusive. My experience screams it to me. I can't hear anything else but that as a truth. You're not providing any rational counter-argument that explains to me why there is some reason I should doubt the fact that I am conscious and I do experience states of being that are dramatically different, and that difference creates value. Okay, so now we'll play some of this shit.
But anyways, the Bentham's argument that moral realism is beyond reasonable doubt is so paltry, it's hardly worth mentioning.
Yeah, paltry. I mean, I just don't understand. How can it possibly be paltry unless you don't feel? If you're telling me, you give me this whole explanation of how you had grand mal seizures and somehow you can't tell the difference between your grand mal seizures and you know, the day you had a pleasant afternoon in the park or something. Somehow those two experiences are parallel, they're in parity, that it wouldn't matter if you had buttons to press, you would press lots and lots of those grand mal seizures, but it's just as good as the other shit, that you can't make any distinction, there's no value difference between these things, that you'd wish it on your daughter. If it was your daughter's welfare and you could make her happy or you could make her sad, you just say sad, who cares? What's the difference? Press buttons, just hit anything, it doesn't matter. It's a fact that it doesn't matter. It's not that we can't discern what the buttons mean. You're just stating that what moral nihilism means is not that value is unascertainable as a certainty. No, that it doesn't exist at all and that it doesn't fucking matter. And yet I don't think you would want your daughter hanging over the mouth of a volcano balanced on that being the truth. I think your faith in that truth would be demonstrated to be so thin if something of real jeopardy rided on that being the truth.
It's not even an argument. It's nothing more than an expression of personal incredulity.
Well, that's not true. I think it's an argument to point out that all these animals, especially the mammals on Earth, are engaged in a conscious experience. I think that's fact. We can state it, and that consciousness creates sensations, feelings, and that feelings create value by being experienced, because they can be substantially negative or substantially positive. And depending on where they fall on that scale, they will have a different value weight. Holy crap.
Consider physicalism taken for granted by modernity. Is not the evil genius hypothesis every bit as reasonable an explanation of experience as positing a Mariological world with self-relationally identical objects that temporally endure?
Yeah, no, I'm just way too tired to even try to unravel what he just said. But again, he's just trying to make it into some sort of like it's all a dream or something, or like it's not even a dream, right? Because we would We would even have apprehension about having certain kinds of dreams. We would say, don't press that nightmare button. So we can't even call it that. He's saying it's somewhere beyond just a dream, where it goes someplace. That this conscious experience I have, somewhere in his reality, it is evaporated into some sort of piece of paper or something, some sort of nothing, some sort of like it really wasn't an experience, like it really wasn't meaningful, like it really didn't happen to me, like I really don't know that it's decidedly negative or decidedly positive. Somehow I've got it wrong. That somehow my sensations, when they scream this stuff to me, it isn't an accurate scream. And somehow in his universe that's all negated, yet he will explain nothing about how the structure of the universe could undo the reality I'm experiencing, the fact of it. How could it undo the fact of it? I'm experiencing it, and he's saying he has a truth, a fact, a piece of logical evidence that can decisively put a wedge through my conscious experience and make it obvious to me, or reveal to me some sort of reason why I should deny the existence of my own sentient experience. Can't do that.
The fact is,
there we go.
Philosophically, in Mendham's mode of incredulous presuppositionalism, would be...
Yeah, well, it's not exactly presuppositionalism. I mean, it's not like I'm speculating as something about something 500 million light years away. So the presupposition does have an element of water is wetness to it. It does have an element where every word in our vocabulary was written by the fact of these sensations. I obviously wasn't the only one who had them, because people have already named them, because they had them. And personally experiencing them, like I said, I can assume that maybe for you, I can suppose that maybe you don't have this experience, that your consciousness isn't really conscious, and you can't realistically and really tell the difference between your good feelings and your bad feelings, and that it really doesn't matter to you which one you have, as long as you're still functional, or by some other standard of what you define as some sort of contrived value, some value related to some ambition or desire or something, which is a contrived, projected value, that somehow this real value of your sentient experience has no meaning. So as long as you could still wash the dishes, you wouldn't care whether you were miserably nauseous or not. I can't understand how you don't care. I don't understand how you cannot know that it would be better not to feel bad and to feel good. How you can't know that there is bad and good. I just don't understand how you can't understand that. And that it's not a presupposition. I'm not stating it like I'm speculating what's happening inside your mind. I'm telling you, I'm having this experience where I can see a decided difference between feeling bad and feeling good.
Be laughable if it weren't so tragically pathetic. As long as we remain in the realm of inference to the best explanation, we see that moral realism violates the principle of parsimony.
Oh dear, I'm not looking that up. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. Again, the argument is evidentially based. There is evidence for sensation, and there is evidence that it is value-rich, in that we can see what humans will do to avoid one thing and to get to the other thing. The attractive and repulsive natures are written into the things, and the fact that repulsion and attraction are fundamentally value-latent concepts.
That is, it has no explanatory value, similar to how trolls and fairies have no expressly manifest explanatory value.
Trolls and fairies? I mean, really? I thought he was going to say something about Santa Claus in here. He makes a comparison, like somehow this theory of suffering is like the theory of Santa Claus. Like somehow that's a fair argument. I've been with my sentience for 50 years. I haven't had Santa Claus sitting next to me for 50 years. But for 50 years, sentience has existed in me, and I've communed with it, and I've been intimate with it. Santa Claus, I've never met him, never seen him, never even heard of the idea even being anywhere realistically anywhere in the universe. I never believed in one. I always thought it was rather preposterous. So it almost seems like a straw man comparison. I mean, Santa Claus? What evidence do I have of Santa Claus? I have none. I have a ton of evidence that I have good and bad sensations.
And can, via Occam's razor, be cut from the ontological equation. Now, a moral nihilist can have values, while recognizing that said values are not transcendent norm reflective.
Well, I really don't see the point of it then, right? You're just going to contrive values? I mean, it's just silly. It doesn't make any sense. You just contrive a set of values and pretend it matters when it doesn't. It just creates like an entirely fake economy. If you're going to pretend there's money and there's no money, there's rich and there's not poverty, and then you've conceded there is no rich and there is no poverty, then how can you possibly contrive an economy? And it's a nonsensical notion. Once you've conceded that it doesn't matter, then you can do anything as long as... See, that's the trick of it, right? Because you're going to have to concede to your own self-interest as if there wasn't value built into that itself. And so you're saying your own self-interest that will motivate you to take where you can take or to give where you can give for whatever means, for whatever manipulation it would carry with it. Obviously, you wouldn't do it out of anything called generosity. But even your own selfish desires, you're conceding to them in some respect. If you're going to contrive ethics, you're going to be doing it to satisfy some sort of innate desire mechanism. And if you're doing that, you have to concede that that innate desire mechanism is creating value. Or you have to say that your own feelings are a lie. What sense does that make? Your own feelings are lying to you? Your own desire is lying to you? It's lying? I mean, it is lying in the sense that it's contriving or projecting, value. But the feeling isn't a lie. What you feel about is the lie. The fact that you can want is the thing that has meaning. What you want has no meaning. That, I would concede, that I would argue is the truth. The value is in your wanting, not in what you want.
That there is no categorical prescriptivity. That there are only immanent norms and what could be called hypothetical imperatives.
Well, whatever. Hypothetical imperatives. Hypothetical based on what? If you're saying there's no kernel to value, how can you possibly construct a hypothetical that has any basis in logic? You cannot construct a hypothetical that has any moral tone if you are not conceding the existence of some kernel that it would be built on.
Moral nihilists recognize the invalidity of the move from the descriptive proposition, I am suffering, to any transcendent normativity in the proposition, I ought not suffer.
Right, so, he couldn't have said it any plainer, right? He's saying that somehow that doesn't make sense. To say, I am suffering, it doesn't make logical sense to say it would be better for me not to be suffering. That isn't the logical thing to do about suffering, is to fix it, or get rid of it, or migrate it to non-suffering. So if you're in a miserable condition, you shouldn't migrate that condition. There's no prescription that says it's better that you not do that. Can that make any sense to anyone who's not a completely insane fucktard? I mean, both psychologically insane and stupid. How can anything that's not psychologically insane and stupid think it isn't automatically prescriptive as soon as you say the word suffering and acknowledge that it has a quality? Yeah, there's nothing to say unless you're going to say, I love suffering, and have a parade for suffering. Has anybody ever had a parade for suffering? No, I don't think so, because no one really likes it very much.
There are no objective odds. Now, perhaps the antinatalist might be inclined to defend moral realism via a coherence theory of truth, as against correspondence theory, but the isolation objection to coherentism is devastating. That is, that while coherence may be a necessary condition of truth, it's not a sufficient condition.
Well, says you. Whatever. I'm not going to speculate on anything you want to make up as an alternative explanation for something, right? So if you can just make up a god, well, fuck you, okay? Yeah, game over. Go play by yourself, okay? If you're going to say you can disengage any theory of truth by just making something up and saying it's possible, even though it's not really possible, that it's just made up, it's only possible because it's so ludicrous that it breaks all the rules of the physical universe and physical probability. So yeah, it's possible in the sense that yes, you can make an impossible thing, like an all-powerful, all-seeing, all blah blah blah. You can do that and break the game altogether, but I'm just saying that isn't coherent to any of the truth. That isn't coherent to any fact we have. There's absolutely no evidence that those made-up theories have ever been proven to be the truth. They've always been demonstrated over time to be complete crap. So complete crap isn't a counter-argument. Maybe I can't provide absolute evidence in the sense that I can't produce the book of life, the book of the universe, the story of the universe, where it's written somewhere. I, the authority of the universe, do declare that consciousness was a real thing, and it did happen on Earth, and it did have meaning. All right, yeah, I can't produce that book, that testimony. But I can clearly tell you that I know for a certainty, beyond all other facts I know beyond a certainty, this fact is as certain as any other fact I have in my possession, that it is better that I not suffer than suffer. It's just a fact.
And as the law of non-contradiction excludes contradictory sets of internal coherence, and coherentism does not itself provide discriminatory criteria, it becomes obviously problematic. This is known as the plurality objection to coherentism.
Well, whatever. I don't see any of these. All these objections are quite irrelevant. All right. This idea that there's a contradiction built into accepting the fact that consciousness exists, it produces states of being that create value. There's no way you can demonstrate that statement to be inaccurate or beyond what my own evidence demonstrates. But I can also include the evidence of all the other sentient beings in the fact that they do run away from the negative feelings and run towards the positive feelings, and it's just quite obvious that they're all doing that. So I think the argument that they are innately equipped with value creation mechanism called consciousness is just beyond reasonable dispute. And that's the only standard there is. I mean, that's the only bubble that we can draw, is one that's called reason.
What we see is that the antinatalist no sale is the no sale. To express this in the persons of two philosophers, and Tranquil and Hyperborean Voyager, two of my favorite YouTubers, I hope that you will appreciate this.
No, I won't.
That if Schopenhauer saw through the lies of life affirmers, Nietzsche saw through the lies of Schopenhauer.
Oh, yeah, whatever. I don't want to hear all that crap. So thank you for the loud, obnoxious ending. Really appreciate it. So let's see what he wrote here. Be well, antinatalist. You may have many more birthdays. Well, whatever. So, whatever. I mean, Nietzsche again, and no argument provided. Okay? Merely because he says there's no God, that means there's no value, that's your proof. Well, it's a lame and empty proof. My personal experience dictates that the behavior of all the other human beings and all the animals proves the fact that there is a difference between these two states of being. It doesn't need any more qualification. Every rational, intelligent, non-psychotic human can understand it. So put yourself in the proper category. You're fucking crazy. You're just fucking crazy.